Hello and welcome to the Redmen TV. I'm Chris Page and I am joined by Mr. David Garrido of Sky Sports and new YouTube channel La Liga Lowdown. David, give us a little rundown. What is La Liga Lowdown? Why am I speaking to you ahead of the Champions League final?
Let's give you the rundown on the lowdown, shall we? Yeah, it's basically a new Spanish football content hub in English. Obviously, La Liga is one of the strongest leagues in the world, along with the Premier League. And there are a lot of English-speaking fans who might not necessarily understand the content in Spanish. So we're there to basically let this global audience see, hear, feel Spanish football in English and creating a whole bunch of content. There's a few creators in Spain, boots on the ground, if you like, in Barcelona, Valencia, Madrid, the north of Spain as well. And we've got a podcast as well. We really want to kind of get people excited about what is, technically very, very, very high level league. And also all the stories. It's a bit of a mad league as well. It's one of those things, if you really like Spanish football, you probably like Spanish culture, Spanish history, Spanish politics. All of this is wrapped up in Spanish football. It's a fascinating league. We want to bring those stories to our audience.
Excellent, okay. Well, one of the stories obviously emanates out of La Liga at the moment and the Premier League is the Champions League final. It's the biggest story in football ahead of the World Cup. Liverpool facing off against Real Madrid. First of all, before we get your opinions on the final itself, I wanted to ask you, David, why haven't Madrid been very good in the league this season?
It's really strange, isn't it? Because they won the league last season and the Champions League and a number of other trophies. But this season, I think there's been a degree of complacency. They beat Barcelona over two legs in the Super Cup, 5-1 on aggregate. And I think actually it's probably the worst thing that happened to them because they were very complacent after that. And actually at home, this is an astonishing stat, they haven't beaten any of the other teams in the top six.
Wow.
So they lost to Barcelona, lost to Valencia, lost to Real Betis, lost to Villarreal, only drew against Atletico and Valencia. And so 2 points out of 15 at home.
That's not Real Madrid, is it?
Right, exactly. And I think also early on, they struggled not only with that complacency, but they lost Ronaldo because he pushed the referee. I don't know if you remember this, Chris, in the first leg of the Super Cup. So he was out for the second leg and then 4 more games. And that really set them off on the wrong foot. And I just don't think they've been hungry enough. And they gave up on the league, pretty much in December. After the first Clásico, just before Christmas, they were so far behind Barcelona, it just wasn't worth it. And everything after that was really on the Champions League.
You said they weren't hungry enough in La Liga. Obviously, they're going for the third Champions League on the bounce now. I mean, it's not been done in this iteration of the European Cup. It's not been done since Bayern Munich, I think, in the 80s. Are they as hungry for the Champions League as maybe Liverpool are, who haven't won it since 2005?
I think they are, and they feel that they've got this sort of special relationship with the competition, very much like Liverpool do. But when they won it in the late 50s, when they were the first team to dominate it, the generation of Paco Gento, even before, even before then. But you're right. I mean, Di Stefano was one of the biggest figures in Real Madrid history, right? And now they feel they want to create that historic era. And they've been to, well, this will be the 4th final in 5 years, right? They've won the other 3, and they really feel that their aura is really half of the argument. When you look at players like Ronaldo and Ramos, they've got such confidence. And it's not fake. They really do believe that this is almost their destiny. And they are that hungry because 3 in a row, well, Zidane would then become the manager, the coach who's won the most European Cups for Real Madrid. Astonishing. Wow. He will have done it all in the last 3 seasons. And is the dude a manager? Do you know what? I think he's more of a manager than a coach. He's more of a manager of egos and energy than a coach who's a tactician, who knows how to set out a team, who will have a chess game in his head that he wants to try and play out. So it's a fascinating picture and a fascinating relationship that they have with the European Cup.
Just to pick up on some of the stuff you mentioned about Zidane there, I think a lot of people will probably, and correct me if I'm wrong here, David, you're the expert on this. A lot of people will see it and think that he's sort of that man manager. He can mould these egos because he's been a part of these big locker rooms, at Juventus prior to Real Madrid. Is that something you think that he draws on those experiences to shape this side?
100%. That's exactly right. I think that part of his skill is just letting his players go out and play. Remember that when he was at Real Madrid, he was one of the Galacticos, along with Figo, along with Beckham. There was already Ronaldo, as in the Brazilian Ronaldo, already
the
there.
Real one.
The real one. Il Fenomeno, as they used to call him. I mean, he's been born and bred into that environment. He knows what those kind of players and characters and personalities are like, which is quite complex. But equally, I think the energy side of things is important. So it's not just about the egos and making sure that everyone's happy. Last season, he did it so well because essentially he had an A team and a B team. And towards the end of the season, you could really see that the likes of James, Morata, Isco, other players were coming in for those games that didn't really matter as much. Real Madrid just wanted to stay ahead in the league. They would do what they needed to do that. But then in the Champions League, you notice that Ronaldo, having been rested a bit because he wasn't playing in those games, then came to the fore and started scoring more freely. And look what's happened again. Turn of the year, there's been a huge difference between Ronaldo's form before Christmas and then after Christmas and in 2018. And now he comes into this final, just like a train, really.
Yeah, he's unbelievable. He looks unstoppable at the moment. He's going to be a massive question mark on how Liverpool deal with him. I think, just talking about the evolution of the Madrid side for a second, David, I think you picked up on it there. I think the words you used where, he's able to just let them play. And, we've seen a lot of changes in formation. Basically around personnel, I think a lot of the time. I think when I've seen Madrid, they've set up with four at the back pretty much all the time, but then they've played this sort of three-man midfield, sometimes with Isco ahead, and then maybe two strikers in Benzema or Ronaldo. But then we've also seen a return to the 4-3-3 at times during the Champions League run with Bale, Benzema and Ronaldo. How do you think that has affected the form going throughout the season? And how do you think they'll set up against Liverpool in the final itself?
Okay, so I think if there is evolution, it's kind of come full circle. So, yes, there was a little bit of experimenting. You saw them go 4-4-2 for a part of the season as well. They started playing players like Marco Asensio, Lucas Vazquez, who can play wide. Bale also played a bit wide, almost like we expected him to play early on in his Madrid career. When he was at Spurs, left side of midfield, and you'd have Ronaldo and Benzema as the front two. Now, actually, I think that Bale has been the victim of that system. And in fact, even if he was to play up front in the 4-4-2, I just don't think it suits him. And actually, I don't think the 4-3-3 suits him. I think the perfect formation for Gareth Bale. Yeah, I think the perfect formation for Gareth Bale is when he's a little bit deeper in the pitch and gets a chance to run at people, because that's what he's got. He's got that raw pace that's going to frighten the life, admittedly, out of, well, if he plays on the right, I suppose it would be Andy Robertson or it would be Van Dijk. But in a 4-2-3-1, where you had Modric and Kroos as the two. Mm-hmm. And then ahead of that, I mean, this is super attacking. Zidane is not going to do this. This is just my fantasy, okay? But I can imagine you've got Bale, Isco, and Marco Asensio, then you've got Ronaldo. Can you imagine that?
That's scary.
My goodness. Right, if you had that in this final, it would be crazy. It would be madness. And Zidane isn't going to do that. I think actually the evolution came back to the 4-3-3 because players started returning from injury. We know that Bale has had injuries, particularly calf injuries this season. And everyone started settling back into what they know. And that's the 4-3-3. It's what they call the Gala 11. And I wouldn't expect many changes from the team that started last year. And that was the big question, was Isco or Bale? Mm-hmm. And Bale didn't start because he wasn't fully fit. Or from 2 years ago against Atletico Madrid, when the only change really from that team was that Pepe was playing. Of course, he's no longer there, so it would be Varane. So four at the back, Kroos, Modric, Casemiro in midfield. Casemiro obviously holding. And then the BBC, Bale, Benzema and Cristiano. I think it absolutely has to be that. Normally what Zidane does in the league game before the big game in the Champions League final, he tries it out. It's what he did against Villarreal. They were 2-0 up and drew 2-2, but it was essentially the 4-3-3. And look at that bench. Isco, Marco Asensio, Lucas Vazquez. You've got Mateo Kovacic, who's played signing out this season. So, they've definitely got options. And I would still say, I don't know what you think, Chris, but I would still say it is the strongest squad in Europe. With all of those names, both young and old, it's frightening. Yeah,
it is. And it was interesting. I was doing a little bit of research into Real Madrid, and I think their average squad age is, I think if I remember correctly, it's 25.2, but their average first 11 age is 29.1, and that's what you're talking about, that experience, and what Zidane's been able to do over the last sort of 24 months, 18 months, something like that, is he's been able to blood these younger players, the likes of Isco, the likes of Asensio, and they're all ready to go now. These guys are all considered in their own right world stars of football, and yet they're not even making the side. I think when it comes to first 11, for me, I'm not neutral. I can't be neutral. I wear red tinted glasses. I love Liverpool Football Club. I can't see past that. I'm a fan at the end of the day. When it comes to the first 11, I think we're similar. but they've got that experience. I think we've got that hunger. I think the psychology of it might come into it a little bit. But when you look at the squad, and if the game goes to extra time and the way that Liverpool are likely to play, high pressing, maybe tired towards the end, that's when I start to get scared as a Liverpool fan, that they can bring these almost world-class players coming off the bench and who might exploit a little bit of tiredness from guys who, let's be honest, Real Madrid can move the ball side to side 5 times in 1 minute of football. And they will, like they did against Bayern Munich. When Muller doesn't track his man, Marcelo's over there. He's probably one-on-one, one of the best players, definitely the best fullback in world football. Get across it, and you've got a guy with a vertical leap like Cristiano Ronaldo heading across maybe Lovren or Van Dijk. What I suppose where I'm going from this is, how do Liverpool stop that, David?
Well, I think Marcelo's a really interesting question because, yes, he is one of the most offensive fullbacks that there is in the world, not just in Spanish football. But can he actually defend? This is one of the biggest questions. Normally, when teams score against Real Madrid, half the time it comes down their right flank, so Madrid's left flank. And that's because Marcelo was pushed too far up. He just gets overexcited. He wants to join the attack. He's got an excellent ball delivery. I don't know if you saw the second goal that they scored against Villarreal. It was an Isco diagonal ball to Marcelo. And Marcelo, with the outside of his left boot, curled it in for Ronaldo. Just bent it in. A perfect cross. And he can do that both inside and outside. He can get to the byline and cross in, or he can use the outside of his left boot. Now, I think that this is where Mo Salah could have a big part to play. Now, Casemiro, therefore, becomes crucial. Because if you've got Marcelo too far advanced, they've got to give themselves some insurance there. So I think Casemiro has to drop out of the midfield a little bit and start to cover on that left side, because otherwise you've got Salah against Ramos, and I think Salah wins that foot race, absolutely no doubt about it. Or Ramos gets an early booking because he brings him down and suddenly the whole defence is on edge. What does that happen then? Well, Casemiro departing from that central midfield role means that Firmino can drop in and really play between lines, and then suddenly you've got Modric or Kroos having to think about picking him up, or does one of Varane or Ramos come up to get him? So I think that Liverpool can really exploit the space behind Marcelo. It'd be really interesting to see whether Zidane just lets him go and lets him roam and do what he does, or whether he tells him to be a little bit more disciplined. And I'm not sure that Marcelo is capable of doing that. Did
you think, talking about what we talked about before, about Zidane and letting players play the way that they naturally play, and that's how he gets the best of them, do you think that's in his makeup as well? We've not seen Real Madrid change their style for anybody pretty much, apart from maybe Barcelona.
Yeah, and do you know what's interesting? Because people say about Zidane, he's not a tactician, he's not a coach. And you can understand the argument why. Because most of the time when you notice anything tactically about Real Madrid, it's often because of an error. Now, in the first Clásico of the season, he decided to press for the first 20 minutes against Barcelona at the Bernabeu, and it worked. Actually, Madrid seemed to sap Barcelona's control of the game. They couldn't build moves. There was a lot of pressure on Ter Stegen to try and find a man, and it would often go long, which is, of course, not Barcelona's way. But then, in the second half, he decided to pin Kovacic on Messi. And as a result, Messi started dragging him out of position and letting others have a free run. And so the focus on Messi, which is understandable, actually ended up with Real Madrid losing that game. And I think, similarly, he's got to be careful that he doesn't think too much about Mo Salah, because I personally think that Roberto Firmino is going to be one of the biggest dangers in this game. I think that his assist rate is phenomenal. I think he works so hard. And I think that if you focus too much on Salah, you forget about Firmino, then he could really be the match winner, the kingmaker in this game. I think that Zidane has to basically infuse his side once again with that confidence to go out and play no matter what Liverpool do, and that they need to dictate the tempo. The likelihood is they'll probably have more of the ball to start off with, and that they will then dictate the tempo. And if Modric gets on the ball and starts just managing the whole game from his side of things, then I think Madrid really do have a chance. But negate that and exploit Marcelo, and then I think Liverpool are the ones in the ascendancy.
One of the interesting matchups from my point of view is Toni Kroos. I mean, he quite often will roll and rotate into that space that Marcelo's vacated to take up an almost half-back, deep-lying playmaker type role. How have teams who pressed Real Madrid, how have they dealt with that? Because Toni Kroos is a guy who can one touch pass it round you. And there's obviously, because he's vacating space in the middle, if someone's coming out from the middle, you are creating a big hole for Toni Kroos to pass into. What's worked to stop Toni Kroos so far?
Do you know what? I think Toni Kroos is one of those players who sort of goes about his job really diligently, and you don't necessarily notice him. He's the one who, does all those other jobs that, no one else does. I compare him a little bit to Ivan Rakitic at Barcelona. Mm-hmm. The rest of the midfield has to fit around Messi, and Rakitic is often that spare man that does the other stuff. And I think that Kroos is actually quite similar, because Modric is the man who knits the play together. But all of those short passes and covering space, that's what I think he does really, really well, Toni Kroos. And he needs to sort of be involved to keep Madrid sort of ticking over, just in a sort of operational way, so the machine keeps going. I think actually what's worked to stop him is, and in fact Madrid as a whole, is a tactically very drilled side. When you've seen the teams that have beaten Madrid, here's one. So Girona, who were first-timers in La Liga this season, very small club, and they decided to play with three at the back, and it's pretty kind of intense. It's quick the way that they play, which is obviously similar to Liverpool. But what they do is that they defend in real shape. They don't ever move. It feels like it's very, very fixed. Then they recycle the ball quickly to the wings and swing it in. So it's almost the same cycle every time. And they had Christian Stuani up front for them, former Borough striker.
Never heard of him. Never heard of him.
Well, probably because he wasn't that great at Borough, but he did score 21 goals.
Wow.
For Girona this season. I know, right? This is Christian Stuani we're talking about.
Did they get relegated?
They finished, I think it was 11th, 10th,
wow,
11th.
That's incredible.
No, yeah. I mean, but it's partly because their style of play, their tactical identity was so set, and I think that is the key. That if you stay true to your principles and you enforce your style of play on Madrid, and don't allow them to dictate and don't allow them to sort of operate in the madness in which they operate, because essentially it's just their talent. That's what gets them over the line. It's their talent and admittedly a bit of luck. And have Madrid been lucky? Has Zidane been lucky? Absolutely, yes. You look at the games against Juve and against Bayern Munich. They needed 8 chances to score 1 goal against Bayern. It was astonishing. So my view is that if Liverpool can just maintain their discipline, stay true to their principles, be tactically very, very aware and astute, and their own identity within that, then I think they are the ones who are going to be lifting that cup on Saturday night.
Well, okay. We've talked about a few of the key battlegrounds. We've talked a little bit about the formations and stuff. We're quite deep into this podcast now, and we've not spoken about Cristiano Ronaldo enough. I think the guy has been at the pinnacle of world football for so long, David. And I know that he's morphed his game and he's completely changed his game since that injury a couple of years back. And he's really developed into the world's most lethal finisher. And everything points towards him. I know in the Champions League this season, he's averaging just over 6 shots per game. He's got a conversion rate of 16%, which actually isn't that good. But because he has so many opportunities, he scored 15 goals so far. I think he's got 3 assists in the competition as well. How do Liverpool, if they can, stop Cristiano Ronaldo?
Well, you're right. I mean, he's the most lethal finisher. I would say he's the world's best goal scorer. I'd say actually the best goal scorer of all time. Now, it's always this debate, which ultimately I don't think is a debate anymore about Ronaldo and Messi. But I would say the easiest way to...
Oh, hang on a minute. You can't say that. Who's the better player?
Okay, well, I would say Messi is the better player, but Ronaldo's the better goal scorer.
Oh, you're sitting on the fence there. Well, you've got splinters in your arse there. Come on, you're sat straight on the fence.
No, I think it's the easiest way to explain it, because Ronaldo has evolved into a number 9. Now, we always remember him at United when he was on that left side and he would, tear that right back a new one, and he would cut inside, or he would, he's ambidextrous. But now he plays higher up the pitch and he is more of a default number 9. Now, look, I think that's even more evident when Madrid play in a 4-4-2, because there's not enough space for him to hang out left. But now in the 4-3-3 that has returned in the last couple of months, he does sometimes dart out to the left-hand side, and then he is the point of reference. The thing is that I think ultimately he is the player that if you stop the supply to him, you stop him. Mm-hmm. I think once he gets one-on-one with a defender, then you're in trouble, because he's still got that burst over a shorter distance. But also, interesting that you mentioned the conversion rate. I'm assuming that's a conversion rate over the season, which means that it's balanced out from earlier in the season. So his conversion rate 2018 will be even higher than 16%. It will probably be around 20, because before he was wasting so many chances. When I saw him earlier this season, he had like 6, 7, shots that went off target, or, that he would completely air shot and miss kick. This is not the Cristiano Ronaldo that we're used to seeing. But I think the thing is, it's more to do with stopping the likes of a Modric or an Isco or a Marco Asensio or a Bale getting on the ball and finding him. That, for me, is really the key. And he is a phenomenal athlete. He's changed physiologically. He's lost a bit of muscle. He's better and smarter at managing his energy during a game, not only just during a season, but working out when to make those runs and really terrorise the defence in that way. So I think that's the key to stopping Ronaldo, is stopping the source, stopping the supply to him.
Okay, it sounds like something that's going to be very difficult to do either way. I mean, Cristiano Ronaldo, who has so many shots per game, that would generally say to you that not many teams can stop the supply to him because of the players that they've got. I'm gonna ask you to do a score prediction for this game, David. Who do you think is going to be winners, and what do you think the score is going to be in the Champions League final 2018?
Chris, we were talking about this off air. We really hope that it lives up to the billing, because it's got, all of the elements, all of the hallmarks of a classic, maybe even epic final. And when I say epic, I mean extra time. Oh. Do I mean penalties? No. I don't think it will go to penalties. And I do think when it comes to extra time, look, like I said, Madrid have had luck, and I feel that their luck runs out. Oh. And I think that the experience doesn't necessarily count for as much in football anymore. I know that we talked about their aura and their confidence and their feeling of destiny when it comes to the Champions League. But that's when I think the youth, the hunger, the legs, and even off the bench for Liverpool, I think that will count. And I believe it's going to finish Real Madrid 2, Liverpool 3.
Wow.
In extra time.
Wow. I'd take it right now. I'll probably miss my flight home if it goes to extra time, because we leave it I know, I don't care. I'll be trapped in Kiev forever. I'll party my way all the way home. I won't be bothered if that's the case. David, once again, thanks for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Anytime.
Really great to hear your expertise on La Liga and Real Madrid in particular. Obviously, if you are watching the video, if you've enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it, subscribe to Redmen TV. Over 250,000 subscribers now, and do check out the new channel La Liga Lowdown. There will be links right about somewhere on the screen for you. Go and click that, give that a subscribe. I've watched some of the content, it's absolutely belter. Once again, David, thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure. Good luck. Fingers crossed for Kiev for you, mate.